A good morning to you. Welcome to the broadcast. You're watching Morning Express on this 25th day of February. Always a pleasure to have you with us as we get to start your day in style. Of course, bringing you up to speed with the latest developments. My name is Jesse Rogers.
Indeed, and I'm Trix Ingada. Today we do look at societal issues. We focus on the youth. Today shall be youth and drugs. Later on, we shall be taking a look at why men keep silent despite traumas that dig deep into their hearts and their psyche. And we shall have special guests. We shall have someone who has experienced trauma. We shall have a psychologist as well as a religious leader to dissect this issue, figure out how it's affecting society, and at the same time the solutions. So stay tuned for that and much, much more.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to that conversation, especially now and touching on the men.
Yeah.
We'll definitely delve deeper into that. But let's take a look at the latest in the dailies. We want to begin with what's happening internationally, taking a look at what is happening with our neighbors. As usual, we begin with the Daily Monitor that highlights the latest from Uganda. This time round, it's all about the government probing how exactly Bobi Wine imported that particular bulletproof car. It made rounds on social media as the supporters of Changulanyi were ecstatic around this particular car. Now, sources say URA wants officials to explain how the vehicle was cleared for use by Bobi Wine without security vetting. Even as that happens, the Chief Justice has refused to quit Bobby's petition, where the lawyer had warned the head of the court to step down, citing a conflict of interest. The latest from Uganda right there. Let's cross over to the Citizen, highlighting what's happening in Tanzania, where President Magufuli has officially dissolved Dar es Salaam City Council. On the 24th, he dissolved the City Council and upgraded the Municipal Council to Dar es Salaam City Council. Now, 6 key changes that impede Tanzania's mining sector this even, as we take a look at some of the latest issues surrounding President Magufuli. Let's cross over to Rwanda right now. Take a look at what's happening around there. They're focused on one story on South Sudan, which is amongst the countries struck by extreme weather and abnormal severe flooding following heavy rainfalls from June 2019 until the end of the year. Definitely taking its toll in South Sudan, even as Rwanda Air to be the first African airline to trial IATA travel pass and also the body of an Italian envoy who was killed in DRC has returned home in Rome, Italy. Latest on that, make sure you updated on what's covered on the Rwanda Today. Over to the East African right now. Let's just highlight what's there. One on Rwanda, where Rwanda kicks out 386 officers from the police force. This is more than 6 times the total number of police officers the force dismissed between January and October 2020. Find out the reason why, even as Museveni's inner circle secretly given COVID jabs. That's according to a US paper. We'll definitely delve deeper into that, even as Kenya's clamor to procure the COVID vaccine heightens. Over to CNN. Let's take a look at what's happening in world news. In World First, Germany convicts Syrian regime officer of crimes against humanity. Interesting story right there, even as the Philippines offers to let nurses work in Britain and Germany in exchange of coronavirus vaccines. That seems to be the latest emanating from the latest from the world news. We'll definitely keep you updated about that and much more, even as we want to shift focus to what's happening in the local papers this time round. Of course, we highlight what's happening in the Standard, or what has been highlighted in the Standard and the Daily Nation as well. Not forgetting the Business Daily is also here. Now, taking a look at some of the stories, it's on your front. It's on the front page and it's on your screen right now. Raila, if I am elected, he's looking ahead just the day after BBI's Super Tuesday win. ODM leader gives Kenyans a glimpse of his radical plan to increase cash allocation to counties to a high of 55%. The sneak peek into the potential contents of his manifesto is his strongest hint yet that he will run for the top seat in next year's polls. And of course, joining me just to highlight some of the stories right here covered in the Standard and the Daily Nation, amongst other dailies, is Gloria Oroba, youth policy analyst. Many thanks for your time and good morning.
Morning, Jesse.
Yes, are you shocked by the front page? I'm pretty sure we all had perhaps him saying that he might subsequently take that ceiling to 55%, as is the case in Nigeria. What say you about this?
I think this is the season where politicians will promise heaven on earth. And I think it's our duty as those who are advocating for civic empowerment to basically sensitize the people on you know, what is possible and what is not possible. In terms of promising 55%, 60%, whatever percentage, we must start understanding how our budget is, where we are with our debt and our repayment plan. So any candidate who's coming in to promise anything, you know, right now, as you know, we are getting something between 11% to 15% in every county.
Yes.
Some counties are not even hitting that 15% on their allocation. So when someone comes in and says that when they get in 16 months, they're going to give us 55%, it is then upon us to start asking questions on where the money is coming from. You know how our debt is, and you know that we are literally surviving on the negative. So as to whether I'm surprised or not, no, I'm not surprised, because we're in the campaign season. They are going to promise kilometers of roads. They are going to promise literally heaven on earth. So I think as citizens, as active citizens, we must sensitize the people on what is there, what is a reality, and so that by the time anyone is coming to say I'm running for office and I'm going to give, to create, let's say, 100 or 1 million jobs per month, we have to really question how they intend to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The nitty-gritty details. Even as we expect Raila to perhaps submit his nomination papers this Friday, being the deadline, surely hope we'll see some progress right there. Apart from that, I think BBI has definitely been a key area of focus, and it's also on the front page right there. Pulling strings, how tide changed for BBI. Behind the scenes, from the onset, the Building Bridges initiative faced strong opposition that led to a perception that most counties, save for Raila's Nyanza backyard, would sink the bill. But this proved hollow on Super Tuesday. What exactly led to this sea change in thinking and overwhelming endorsement? Well, the Standard explores. I want you to explore as well, Gloria Oroba. What do you think led to this tide change? And did you expect this as well? 41 giving a green light, 1 saying no, and 5 others still conducting public participation.
I definitely expected that it would pass at the county assemblies. Remember, there was an introduction of, you know, the grants, the car grants. And so therefore, you know, it's unfortunate, but most of these elected leaders, particularly the member of county assemblies, those ones they're looking for personal interest. And not only that, there is an element that introduces the fund that now will be dedicated to the MCAs, yeah? So remember, right now, they don't have any control over, for instance, the CDF or any other. So for them, they're looking at it on a personal level. Like, if I actually get re-elected, what's going to happen? You know, I'm going to have a fund that I'm going to control. I'll be able to do certain things. So I didn't, I'm actually surprised that we are not done with passing it in all the counties. Now, the question becomes is, when it goes now to the referendum and it goes to the public, remember, the same way the MCAs are looking out for their interests as elected leaders, that's the same way that Kenyans are also going to be looking out for their interests. So if a lot of sensitization is going to be done in terms of, by having 650 MPs, how heavy will that be on a private citizen in terms of taxes, in terms of all these new introductions? Remember now, we're already being introduced to this new tax, or is it the NHIF per household? So, you know, slowly they're starting to creep in, because that expanded executive, that 650 member of parliament, they have to be catered for financially, and it has to come from our taxes. Yeah. So I think it's not. Let's not get so excited about the MCAs passing it, because the MCAs will pass. Who's going to say no to a car grant of over $1 million? Who will say, okay, I'm not going to pass this because I don't want to? Even if I don't intend to use the car grant to buy a car, I might be saying, you know, for instance, where I come from in Mombasa, I might say, okay, let me get the car grant and decide to go and have a borehole in one of my, you know, wards. So I think let's not get too excited. At the end of the day, let's look at how the people are going to welcome it in terms of now the referendum.
Exactly.
And I think that's where now there might be a little bit of push and pull. But otherwise, they should pass it very quickly so we can focus on other things that we need to focus on.
Okay, that's interesting. So according to you, the MCAs did not choose development, they chose their personal interest first.
Well, you know, the good thing about devolution is even if the MCAs are focused on their personal interest, the personal interest somehow trickles down to development, because the fact that they are pushing to have a fund that they will control, at the end of the day, because the people will know now, because we passed BBI, you have a certain percentage, they will demand for certain things.
Yes.
They'll demand for development down on the ward level. So, but the intention is not necessarily that they're passing it because of the plight of the people.
Okay.
They're passing it because they have been offered car grants, because they have been whipped by being bribed, you know, by incentives by their governors or otherwise. So on that level, it's on personal interests, and we wait for the referendum to see how the people are going to take it.
All right, Gloria. Let me introduce Suleiman Bashir, who's joining us. Advocate as well as a lawyer. It would be interesting to get your take on this. Just after Super Tuesday, 41 counties have given the green light to this particular issue. But even as we talk about car grants, one issue stuck out. It might be a headache for governors in terms of oversight. When we take a look at the ward development fund, speak to us about this, even as we appreciate the fact that as from next week, they will kickstart the popularization campaigns.
Thank you so much. I think some of the things that are coming up quite clear is that there are two very important stages when it comes to amending the Constitution, especially with respect to issues that touch on Article 255. Those two arms, one is with respect to the county assemblies, and the other one is with respect to the people. Now, going forward, I think there are a number of things we need to consider. What impact might passage of the bill through the county assemblies, what impact might it have on the end game? That's one thing.
Okay.
The second thing, actually, I ask myself is, when I look at the architect of Article 257, what is the next stage? When you read Article 257, what it says is that immediately we go through the county assemblies, this bill will be submitted to Parliament, both levels of Parliament, or both houses. Now we again ask ourselves, is that a very crucial stage? It is not. When you look at Article 257, sub-Article 10, the end game lies with the people of Kenya. What is the next thing that will happen?
All right.
The people of Kenya will have an opportunity to have an analysis of the bill holistically. But where we are right now, this is a very crucial stage whereby, as Kenyans, we rarely read the bill. We will not internalize the bill, but what happens is we will be swayed by the public and political influence. And one of the key things that will influence the minds of the would-be voters is how the bill has gone through the assemblies. So any person that may not have read the bill now looks at it in a very superficial sense, sees that around 41, 42 county assemblies have passed the bill, then he or she just decides to pass it. And I think that is the wrong footing.
Okay.
What we need to do, and what each and every person needs to do, is to holistically analyze the bill with a view to maybe making an informed opinion. I think now going forward, what we expect is a huge campaign with respect to how things are going to unfold. And this will be on the basis of a number of things whereby those who are for it and those who are against it, who will be trying to influence the minds of the voters. But most importantly, we need to have a stake in with respect to where the civil society organizations are coming in to give a very neutral perspective of the bill to educate Kenyans for them to make up a rightful mind.
As well, I'd like to pick your take, both of you, 1 minute on this particular murmurs, rumors that might center around this particular bill not taking the popular initiative route, the referendum. I know that Article 255(1) definitely does stipulate all this, but there seems to be a couple of leeways around this. Let's start with you.
You see, Jesse, when you look at Article 255, it outlines, Article 255 of Article 1 outlines certain critical issues that, if touched, will take us to a referendum. These include issues to do with the Bill of Rights, supremacy of the constitution, functions of parliament and all that.
Yeah.
When you are trying to introduce in the office of the prime minister, it will affect the functions of parliament. When you are trying to introduce certain maybe levels of an opposition leader within parliament, when you are trying to reorganize the house, it will in a way affect the functioning of that house. On the other part, there are certain issues that also I think the bill is going to affect with respect to how we are going to deal with the corrupt people. You see now that is taking us back to chapter 4, which is on the Bill of Rights.
Okay.
It is touching on the Bill of Rights. So I think that whole argument of saying that we may avoid this through going to Parliament is neither here nor there.
Right.
This bill has hugely affected Article 255, sub-Article 1,
Okay.
and we cannot avoid a referendum.
Gloria, what's your take on that?
Jesse, I'll tell you something. The
Yeah.
drivers of this initiative knew that one way or another, they have to pass it. So when I hear these rumors about, once the county assemblies have passed it and, we don't necessarily need to go for a referendum, I actually don't think Kenyans are concerned to that extent. If you ask me, we have the civil society who, through the initiative, which is Linda Katiba, are the ones who are actually actively going out to lead the No campaign. And that was never the interest of the initiators of this bill. The interest was that they would create a contest between William Ruto and Raila Odinga. And once they realized that William Ruto is not necessarily interested in that contest, then it became an issue of, it's no longer, it's more like, okay, let's finish so that we can move on, This was supposed to provide a basis of campaign for retired Honorable Raila Odinga.
Okay.
And the moment that did not take shape, the moment people were not actually getting pulled into, William Ruto was not getting pulled into pushing the No campaign, then you can see now they're saying, there's no point of a referendum, because the referendum was basically going to test the waters in terms of the strength on who has ground, whether it is Ruto or Raila Odinga. So when they've realized that that is not happening, of course then who wants to spend a lot of money going out to push for a referendum when really there's no contest? When everybody who's involved in the initiative is saying, okay, change this, change that, but even if you don't change it, it's fine, pass it, because we are not necessarily interested in the referendum. So I think at the end of the day, if it appears that Ruto does not come out strong to push for a No campaign, then definitely it does not make sense to go for a referendum.
Okay.
And that's what's going to happen.
Okay, and what's his best political move right now? Because it's highlighted on page 6, asking what next for DP Ruto, even as he faces tough options as assemblies pass the BBI bill. His allies say it's a win-win situation to his supporters, whether BBI is accepted or rejected by Kenyans, since it's never been their priority. The kind of echoing what you're saying. Suleiman Bashir, what next for DP Ruto?
I think in my view, when we look at how things have unfolded, we may not, at this stage, it might be wrong to conclude that things have ended up. These are members of a county assembly who have been promised some perks. Maybe that is the ground upon which they have passed the bill.
Yeah.
But the end game lies with the people of Kenya. For now, this is an important stride for the promoters of the bill. It is indeed a very crucial stage that they have gone through, but it doesn't mean it is the end game. So I think on the part of the DP is about reorganizing and re-strategizing to see how we can counter this. And one of the ways of countering this is through mass campaign to ensure that the people of Kenya vote down the bill. Let me also appreciate, Jesse, the fact that to this date, we are yet to see the stake or the place of the civil society organizations. What we can see right now are the promoters and the anti-bill influencers. On the other part, I think there is this campaign that is now dubbed the Linda Katiba campaign.
Yeah.
I think, in my view, that may not be a civil society organizational space appreciated as such, because it has emerged as a campaign. What we expect on the part of the CSOs is to give us and tell us this is what the bill is about. It's about educating the people of Kenya. Then you leave it to the people to make up their minds. When you decide for them, I think now that is taking up a certain position at this very initial stage. So I think going forward, ultimately, what I may just wish to say is this.
Yeah.
On the part of the deputy president, this is not the end game. The most important stage remains with the people of Kenya.
Okay, Linda Katiba is still within the foray. Not a lot of emphasis has been given to that particular group as compared to the proponents of the BBI. What say you about this uneven playing field, quote unquote?
I actually beg to differ with my co-panelists, because I think the civil society has come out strong. You see, what a lot of people don't understand is the civil society will always look at how this bill is going to affect the communities in the grassroots. When they were talking about shared prosperity, a couple of questions came up. How do you intend to create those jobs? When you're talking about youth, how do you intend to actually ensure they're off the streets? When you're talking about protection of human rights, remember when the first BBI came out and it was threatening to touch on the independence of the judiciary, then the civil society actually came out strong and said, you know, the judiciary has to remain independent. When he talked about police brutality, because at one point that was also mentioned in parts of the BBI, how they intend to turn it into a service against, you know, and not a police force. So the civil society has actually been very actively involved from the moment we started the Building Bridges initiative was introduced to the public. And I think the reason why they might not be coming out too strong at the moment is because they're dealing with other issues like the pandemic. They're dealing with the economic recovery. I can tell you for a fact right now, a lot of these organizations have actually been mandated to go and make sure that people are surviving. They are trying to figure out the programs around not only economic recovery, but you know the pandemic brought in a lot of problems such as teenage pregnancies, a lot of gender abuse. So we are busy out here dealing with the effects of the pandemic. So when you try to say, forget about dealing with those effects and now come and talk about, you know, do you support or do you push for the referendum, I don't think at this point, even for the civil society, that it is a priority. But I will tell you the position of William Ruto. When someone says, I don't think it's the end game, this was never his contest. He was never a part of this. He has been very clear from the very beginning. You know, I thought that Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta were working on uniting the country. I support that. But when it came into a referendum and things like that, then, you know, that is a whole different ballgame, and I'm not interested. So I think his position remains the same.
Okay.
He's not, for instance, in my county, in Kisii County, our governor and our governor Ongwaya and deputy governor, they actually retreated to Mombasa and ensured that the bill was passed.
Okay.
And when you look at the position, particularly of the deputy governor, he is a Tanga person. But down in the grassroots, some of those constituencies and wards and the people are interested in passing the BBI. So at the end of the day, it is not in William Ruto's interest to start whipping, you know, which county passes, because at the end of the day, if there are people who are really interested in it, and that's the reason why he's sort of taking a back seat on it.
Yes. No, he's been on record mentioning, hey, BBI tutaiangusha. Anyway, a story for another day. Let's cross over to something touching on the pandemic. COVID-19 jab, will the poor have a fair shot? That's a question on page 2 of the Standard. Even as the state hinting that it will allow the private sector to import the vaccine, there are fears that those with deep pockets might jump the queue, leaving millions of poor Kenyans vulnerable. I'll start with you, gentlemen. This is interesting. We've just highlighted one story in Uganda where it emerges that those close to Museveni might have already accessed this particular shot. And maybe it goes without saying, the mighty might have also accessed this in Kenya. But with the entrance of the private sector, do you foresee further challenges vis-a-vis the benefit of more COVID-19 shots coming into the country?
You see, Jesse, with the introduction of these jabs in our country, I think the class issue will come up again. Those who can afford it compared to those who may not be able to afford it. The other day, I think these jabs were brought, I think, to Ghana. And those who majorly were able to maybe afford it are those who have the deep pockets. In our country, a country that is already reeling under economic hurt, a country that cannot even withstand whatever issues that we are going through with respect to all the other illnesses, and our people that cannot afford easy health care may not be in a position to afford this jab. What is again going to come up is we shall have the majority of Kenyans who may not easily be in a position to afford the jab. We shall have, on the other part, those who will be in a position to afford it, and those who are able to afford it will do so to the exclusion of the poor. Let's do this. If the government of Kenya is making that move of maybe acquisition in these jobs to this country, let it do so at a very pocket-friendly price or even free to the people of Kenya, to give that aspect of equality, because the aspect of healthcare is so equal to all the people of Kenya.
Okay.
So if the government may not be able to give it for free to the people, because the government is paying billions in its acquisition,
True.
let it give it to the people at a very reasonable prices, which the people of Kenya may be in a position to afford. Let's appreciate the fact that the other day, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics had come up with statistics whereby 94% of Kenyans are earning a monthly salary of less than 100,000. 94%. So look at it that way. These are the people that form the majority of the people. Let us do this in a way that appreciates them, even if the government will take a step to cushion the healthcare aspect that is affecting them.
Okay, it's also proper to know that rich countries might particularly be holding this particular vaccines, leaving poor countries, amongst them African countries, exposed. Gloria, what's your take on this?
I think we have to ask ourselves, what are these numbers? I was looking at the cheapest, according to standard there, you have 240 shillings.
Yeah.
And I was trying to do a little bit of maths, and I say even if you take, basically we have about 50 million Kenyans, and you say that the government wants to come in and actually give this vaccine for free.
Yes.
And then I asked myself, where if I was sitting somewhere in a committee in the government, where do you think I'll get this money? First of all, I want to challenge them. How much money did we receive for COVID funds in terms of all those donations that came from, different INGOs and European Union and whatnot? And then I would ask myself, how much money actually went to thinking on the COVID effects? And then you look at the other things that we're trying to push right now, including that referendum, because if you do that 240 shillings by 50 million, I think you get around, what, 12 billion? So, I mean, it's just an issue of, does the government have goodwill to step in and actually act as a government, because the government is supposed to provide services.
Yes.
So we understand that maybe some of these things might not be practical in terms of ensuring that it's free for all, but we have data. If you go to government facilities, health cares, you have data of how many health care service provider on government level is, how many people they are attending to. So perhaps also go to the most vulnerable, those who are unable to even make 100 shillings, and say, if you go to, let's say, a facility in Dagoretti North in Kabiro, you'll probably get, the jab for free if you show your ID, or if the chief knows you're staying there, because there are ways how we can control, who goes to get it for free, because the most vulnerable people are actually the most affected. And if you're talking about social distancing and everything, those are the same people who are unable to take up those measures to ensure that they don't get they don't get COVID. So I would expect to see a little bit more from government in terms of all these committees that they've set up for COVID-19, all this economic recovery and what committees, the Minister of Health and whatever, they should have a think tank right now to figure out the vaccine is coming. It can't be free for everyone, but on the most vulnerable, what population are we looking at? 3 million, what? And then they see how to facilitate that.
Yeah, at least a little bit of progress on that particular point. Allow us to take a short break. We'll still have Suleiman Bashir in studio, as well as Gloria Orwoba, taking us through what has been covered in the local dailies. When we come back, Trix Ngado will take over, still taking a look at the Standard and what has been highlighted in the Daily Nation as well. To stay with us.